Welcome to the Whiskey and Wisdom Podcast, coming to you from the Cargo District Recording Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we discuss the most fascinating topics of life. I'm Tyler Yaw with my co-host, Chris Kellum, and each week we interview a special guest to learn how they acquired their wisdom over a glass of whiskey. So, sit back, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy Whiskey and Wisdom.
Welcome back to the Whiskey and Wisdom Podcast, and a Happy New Year's to everybody. You got your constant co-host, Chris Kellum, and
Tyler Yaw.
This week we are bringing on a special guest,
Tyndall.
So, welcome on. Nice to meet
Appreciate
you.
it. Yeah.
And surprisingly enough, I know zero about Alan. So,
That's the way we like to get started here on the podcast.
I like to keep it too.
Yeah.
minimal knowledge.
The guy in the background.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because you are involved in a lot.
Yeah, involved in a lot, but I don't know. It's part of me feels like the less that people know about you, the better in some cases.
Right.
And I would just kind of always operated. I don't have to be on the forefront of things or be out in the front.
Right.
I don't know. It's just kind of comfortable.
I always liked being the backstage guy
Yeah.
when it came to putting on events and everything. And then here I am now, a host of a podcast that thousands of people listen to, but
Yep.
it is what it is.
No hiding from that. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you do, you're not doing a good job as a podcaster.
No.
So
See, I'm the silent voice. Very, very rarely do you see pictures of me. It's always Tyler. So people are like, I know that voice from somewhere, but I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
like, who's this Chris guy?
But this week, we popped open a bottle of a classic Colonel E.H. Taylor small batch, bottled in bond. I had a friend of the family, shout out Curtis Stanley, for helping me find this bottle. So we're testing it out before Alan has to pop his bottle.
That's right.
Yeah. So,
I've had mine for almost 2 years now. I've just been looking at it.
right. Finally get to taste what's inside.
Yeah.
See, I'm the worst. Everyone's, save it. And I'm like,
That's not what
I'm
we
just
do
going to
here.
drink it.
Sure. Yeah. What good is it just to have on the shelf forever? I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have a bottle of Stag Junior at the house too. And everyone's like, why would you open that? I'm like, oh, it's whiskey.
What's it going to do? Yeah.
It was made to be consumed.
Yes.
At some point.
Exactly.
I mean, so I get it.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. That is really good.
It's pretty good. You can drink it and it's not too spicy on the back.
No,
It's good.
it's not at all.
No.
I
Get
see.
in trouble with that one.
I understand the hype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely prefer this over like Buffalo Trace.
Yeah.
It's definitely smooth. It's a little warmer than Buffalo Trace, like a caramel coating on your inside of your mouth.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I dig it.
It's one of my favorites.
Definitely.
Hopefully I don't just finish off the bottle.
I know. That's one of those hard ones. It's like you still want to keep something in there for like special occasions. Like
Yeah.
it's almost too good not to drink.
Yeah, but the other issue with having a really nice bottle too is then you have to level up the next time, right? So you
Right.
consume that casually, and it's like, all right, well, now what's going to be considered special? You know?
Exactly.
Yes.
If you can just get that anytime you want it, because you have connections.
Yeah. That's kind of what happened with me too. So I had a bottle of Blue Label gifted to me, which is still a very nice and expensive bottle, even retail itself.
Yeah.
And just the stuff that we've had on here, it's not as high tier as it once was
Sure.
before I was getting into whiskey. So it's like, what do I need to drop on now to have that special bottle be?
Yeah. I mean, I've got some friends that have, car value collections of this stuff. And I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, but it would take me an entire lifetime to drink all that. But
Right.
I don't know.
Well, Alan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. I've been down here in Wilmington since 2006. Grew up in Durham.
Okay.
It's not too far up the road, but yeah, I feel like we've done a lot. I met my wife here, and then we moved to Greensboro for a couple of years. That's my short hiatus of not living here, just straight through from 2006.
Yep.
But I got into finance in Greensboro. We moved up there because there really wasn't much going on in Wilmington in 2008, in 2009.
No.
It was pretty rough. I mean, I was at Cape Fear Community College and finished up there. Had the decision to either go to UNCW or to, I don't know, go elsewhere. And so she was like, there's just really not much going on here work-wise or otherwise. So we just left, went up there. Her family is up there. So now I've tended windows for a long time,
Okay.
which I actually love. Like I love doing stuff with my hands like that. And you just have to focus. And it's kind of artistic.
Yeah.
You always go back like on the window tinting thing. You can tell if somebody cares about what they're doing. You just look at the edges of the windows and they're all jagged and stuff. And there's just not, you should not see any glass. If you see glass on the top of your window tint, somebody didn't do it right.
Right.
But so I just got trained by really good people. So I ran a shop up there for a couple of years and then got into finance. Had breakfast with this guy one morning who was about 65 years old and was going to have a conversation with me about life insurance. And that's how it always starts,
Exactly.
And he was like, hey, I think that you would, you seem like you've got something where maybe you could get into the internship. So I joined this big firm and really excelled in it. I really liked it. I mean, it was one of those things where, and this is true for me today, they sit down and they say, hey, you can be top 10 or top 100 if you just do X. You can, and I think that their number was something like, in the first semester while I was going to UNC Greensboro, was where I ended up transferring to. So the first semester up there, they say, hey, if you do, I don't know, like 6 policies or something, you're gonna be in the top 10. I was like, 6? That's it. So I went out and just did a lot more than that. And if they told me to do a certain amount, I would just try to go do more than that and just do more than everybody else. And it catches up. And if you double the work of really anything in a year's period of time, you've worked 2 years in the time that someone else has worked 1, if that. And the compounding effect of that is just, really big.
Right.
So, I did that for years. I was at the same firm for 9 years before I transferred out to a different group. But along the way, I honestly just got a little bit bored. I still loved what I did, but I needed a little bit more, complexity. I think it can become a little bit monotonous to have the exact same conversations every single day. And I liked having some variety in those conversations. I found those are the conversations I got really excited about. Yeah. So started just trying to venture out and work with different types of clients, different people, just by asking for referrals to those specific types of people. And eventually you start getting it, and then that's all you get. So left there, kind of went more toward the boutique space. A smaller firm, was there for 4 years. And then I recently opened my own firm back over the summertime. So all that's been fun. And then, meanwhile, my wife's been a licensed real estate broker for years. I don't know, 10, 12, probably 15 years at this point. And she's always done a little bit of stuff in that. And we just got really heavy into investing in 2019, 2020. Okay. Renovating houses, building houses, starting to pick up some rental properties. So that really opened up a whole new world for us too. We tried we got into the food and beverage thing too, and did the juice bar game for a little bit. Yeah. We had 8 of those at one point. And it's just it was a brutal business. When COVID came around and just it was organic. The prices just went through the roof. It was extremely difficult to make money. So we slowly started offloading those as best we could. Right. And then we have one left that we rebranded away from the group that we were with, and it's located in Durham. So that's been fun. So my wife had fun with it. It's probably as stressful as it was. She also had fun with it because she got to really put her vision to work, with creating menus and the type of ingredients she likes to use. So it's all very health focused. But I'd say we've really narrowed things down to a couple things at this point, thankfully. I'm 36 now. We've got a bike shop in town, City Bicycle Company, which got me into triathlons, which I absolutely love. It's down by Lumina Commons, right across the street here.
Oh, great. That's why I was like, I know that name sounds familiar, and that makes sense. Yeah,
we acquired it in 2020 and moved it from a small space over there. That's been a blast. That's just a fun business. We have really great guys working in there. So I just really a lot. And it comes with challenges too with COVID and distribution issues and all these other kinds of things, but it's just fun. And it's a world that I'm in. I bike a lot. So I don't know, it's a very community oriented type thing.
So is that bike spot there? Are you like buying and selling bikes and fixing them up, or okay,
all of the above? We do custom bikes, frame up, a lot of carbon stuff that we actually have a manufacturer that we do our own custom line as well. So it's pretty neat. I'm just trying to do something a little bit different. But if we can boil it down to just finance, bike shop, and building and selling some houses and some rentals, like that's plenty. Yeah, and even that is a lot. But it's just I don't know. We just tried a lot of things out to figure out what worked, and we're kind of at that point where we've figured it out, and now we just want to expand in those particular areas. Which I think that's what a lot of people say, right? Like you should put all your energy into one space. And I don't know. We just had to figure out exactly what that was.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to put your energy into one space if you don't know if you like it or not. Yeah. So you have to go out there and give it a try.
Yeah, I've got a lot of interest too. I just don't think I'm wired to do the exact same thing every day. Yeah. And I don't think my wife is either. Like we're a lot, it's almost like the good cop, bad cop kind of thing. I run 1,000,000 miles an hour, and then sometimes she's like, hey, we should take a step back and, just look at our vision again and try to figure out where we're trying to get to. Because we just scrambled for the last decade. Scramble is not the right word because It was a more so like organized chaos. We were just trying to do a lot. And then now we've figured out where we want to be. So, yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. We had a kid along the way. So we've got a 9-year-old who's born in 2014.
Nice, yeah.
He's awesome, and he likes getting involved with all of it. He likes to go to the shop with me.
Oh, sweet.
I mean, he likes to travel if we have to go up to Durham to go check out the other place, or, really whatever it is. So we'll go into houses, and he'll walk around and say, hey, they didn't do that right. There's a paint drip right here.
Yeah.
Like he'll call somebody out in a second, which is hilarious.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is crazy. So going back, I have 2 silly questions. One, how do you pick what bicycle seat works best for you?
Man, such a loaded question. So I think that I've gone through so many different saddles.
Yeah.
If you want something that's really performance based, a lot of it's just about riding. I mean, you can get, being guys here, right? Like you can get some numbness if it's not right a seat. And it's just not comfortable. You can have some numbness in your butt can feel great, and then your right pinky toe could be going numb, and all that can be just based on what nerves getting pressed on your saddle. Some of it's the bike fit, making sure you're not slouched over too far, you're not stretched out too far. There's so many different components with it. There's you have fore, you have aft, there's height too. There's all these different adjustments you can make, but I finally dialed one in, and it's the same one I've got on every single saddle. But the one that works for me is not going to work for you, and it's not going to work for you. And it's really tough to figure it out. But I would just say having a really good bike fit. I mean, like in our shop, we've got this thing you can sit on, and we measure where your sit bones are. And so you really want your pressure to be on your sit bones so that you're supported properly. And then it just feels like you're sitting in a chair, kind of. And then having really good bibs too, like having some bibs where you got a little pad underneath there. My wife always tells me if I walk through the house to go for a ride, it just looks like you're walking around with a load in your pants. but it's worth it. Feeling good on the ride, it doesn't really matter what it looks like on the backside.
True. Yeah. Very good point.
I always randomly think about that because I used to have just a beach cruiser, and you're like, 2 miles in, this is not the most comfortable thing.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of those saddles too, they kind of push your knees apart. And ideally, the way that you would walk, you kind of want your legs to be in that same position.
Makes sense.
Like, for instance, it's totally different on a triathlon bike. On a triathlon bike, a lot of people describe your position on that as it's almost like you're sitting down but running kind of position, right? Because you're leaned forward a whole lot more than you're on a road bike, but the geometry is totally different. But the way that your legs are moving, it should be similar to as if you're going running. That's why, if you're training a lot, cycling a lot can be very transferable to running, and it's a lot less impact on your knees.
Right.
I wrestled quite a bit growing up, and so my knees they're pretty good, but they'll flare up a little bit from time to time. So I try to do a lot more cycling than running. It's just easier on your body.
Oh yeah.
And I like it better too. Like even in a race, it's like I have to swim so that I can get to go ride my bike, and then I have to run at the end of it. That's kind of the way I think about it.
Yep.
Interesting. What were you saying?
So you got the bike shop.
Yeah.
And then you got into triathlons after the bike shop?
It actually was the other way around.
Oh, okay.
So I had a buddy who at the time was living down in Dallas, and he calls me up one day, and he's a super athletic guy. At the time, I didn't really have anything that I was doing endurance wise, at all. So he calls me up. It's June. This is 2020, right after COVID's blowing up. He says, "Hey man, I got a challenge for you this year." And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "We should do an Ironman." And I'd heard of it, right?
Right, yeah.
I'm
no clue what's into
Googling it, right? Trying to figure out what's going on. He's like, "Yeah, there's a race down in Waco, Texas." And so I was like, "All right." I was like, "Well, I can just throw a bike back on my car and drive to Waco and do a race, I guess." So I just had no idea. So I didn't have anything. I didn't have a road bike. I had nothing, much less a triathlon bike. Right. Started collecting some things. I committed to doing it and started training. And it was just, man, I wish I would have seen myself then where I'm at now. And by the way, I'm not even crazy competitive now. My best time on a half Ironman is about 5.5 hours. Okay. The first one I did, I was the second to last one to finish before an 88-year-old lady and at White Lake right down the road. It was like a grassroots race. It was only probably 4 months after I started doing anything triathlon related. Okay. Yeah. And so I was out there for 7 hours and 57 minutes.
Oh, jeez.
It was brutal.
The whole entire day.
Yeah. Oh, it's a whole day for sure. Yeah. And you're going to get fried too. Right. The idea is you want to get done kind of early so you're not at peak sun. It's not quite as hot as it could be.
Right.
Whew, man, my Apple Watch went dead. It's my wife couldn't track where I was at. So they're riding around trying to make sure I'm still standing up on 2 feet. It was crazy. But I got the bug, I just had to run with it.
Better than I could do. if I tried to do any triathlon or an Ironman, I would drown before I even had a chance to get to my bike.
Maybe today you would.
Yeah,
But you know, if you get lucky enough to just do all races that have wetsuits, it's kind of hard to. You pretty much float.
That's true. Yeah. Huh. I didn't think about that. That is true.
There's a lot of buoyancy. Like if you can wear a wetsuit in a race, you're supposed to wear a wetsuit. I mean, you don't have to, but like, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't?
You're going to swim way faster. You know, it's that rubber is way more buoyant and water repellent than your skin.
True.
You know, there's just a million reasons to wear one a lot faster.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's a ton of fun. But yeah, so we started doing that, and then the more that I started to understand about, for one, like how expensive, you know, performance bicycles can be.
Oh yeah.
Things like that. I was like, you know, it'd be a little advantageous maybe to have a store. So let's look into it. So, you know, so we looked into it, and there were actually a couple for sale here, and we looked at one and we're like, no, this doesn't make sense. That, you know, there's no lease in place. There's nothing to buy really. So we did not buy that one. Then another one popped up, and that one seemed, it was small enough to where we could take it on and not have a lot of, I don't know, downside risk in the standpoint of we weren't stuck in something bigger than we could handle. Right. So got into that. We were in that location for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half. Then we moved, and we've been in our current spot now for about 2 years over in Limited Commons.
Okay.
So, but yeah, we just kind of jumped in.
Yeah.
And, you know, tried to get involved with stuff locally because I needed to learn more myself. So we got involved with the Cape Fear Triathlon Club, and they've grown substantially. You know, Trent, the guy that runs it. Yeah. Trent Hayden.
Yeah.
Awesome guy. And, you know, they've got the Youth Triathlon Club now. That's growing a lot too. My son's gotten involved with that a bit too. Yeah. It's just awesome. I mean, they're just trying to continue to grow triathlon.
So I want to go back to you buying the bike store, because it doesn't seem like you had much history in biking or anything like that. So people might not know this, but there's always businesses to be bought and sold, especially in Wilmington.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in being a business owner, you have no experience in something, but you see a business that looks interesting, what's the first couple steps that someone should take to buy that business?
Yeah. I mean, so for us not knowing anything about the bike world, for one, we would try to do some research online for one, but largely, I'm saying this out of two sides of my mouth, because in a smaller location like that, there was one employee that worked there. It was a fairly simple business to operate, right?
Right.
And I say that because I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, and neither did my wife. Like, I knew that she's phenomenal in retail, picking out things that are super trendy. Like, she would pick something and it would just blow out of the door.
Yeah.
And she's very gifted with that. And for me, being involved with the cycling community or the triathlon community here, I was understanding what people wanted from that. So I was like, all right, well, if we've got those two aspects and I can be involved and they can see, all right, well, you know, Alan's out here doing the thing, right? He's got the equipment that they're offering in the store. You know, how much more difficult could it be?
Right.
The thing that I completely underestimated was the fact that I didn't know how to work on a bike, right? So just sometimes I relate that back to these, you know, gigantic corporations, right? And it's like the CEO can be so far detached as to what actually happens down on the ground floor,
right? Versus
Elon, who would go and he'll assemble a car right next to the guy, you know, making $70,000 a year building cars, you know, the guy or girl, whoever's working down there. And so I had no idea. I was like, maybe I should go to a bike training school, a bike school or whatever. I had no idea. I was like, I'm going to be in trouble if this dude rolls out one day.
Oh, true. Yeah.
So, but it's extremely difficult to pull the kind of talent that you need, especially here locally in the cycle. Because if you have that level of talent, you're already somewhere. And there's everything that I've seen just in general in the industry, there's a good bit of loyalty, like with the shops that you're at. You know, people tend to hang around there unless there's just some major issue that makes you go somewhere else.
Right.
But so I say all those things to say the finances looked good. You know, we're able to get a good deal with the seller. There's some seller financing involved. So we were trying to not have we didn't want it to be super capital intensive, and it wasn't. And then as you grow, it's just a totally different animal when it grows into a much larger space and your overhead's higher and things like that. So it changes. But yeah, I mean, the most important thing I feel is you need to figure out, you know, is the business or is it the person that owned it? Because you think about if you develop a relationship with the guy that cuts your grass, right?
Yeah.
And you know that person, you know how good they are, you know they love their job and the business that they built up, and they're always going to take care of you. Well, Tyler, if you come in and buy that business, I have no loyalty to you at all. I don't even know you. So those are some of the things that we try to look for too. Is this business built around the owner and it's just not going to succeed? What's the attrition rate going to be if we buy this thing and no one wants to buy bikes from me?
Yeah.
You know, so that was a big consideration too. And it seemed like there was some, but we also came in and kept doing, like, I also don't think you should come in and upset the apple cart.
Right.
If things are going really well with the business, I think the last thing you want to do is just come in and wreck everything, right? Change everything, change up staff, change up all your offerings, make it a different business, because then you're not buying a business, you're creating a new one.
Yeah.
And, it might be different in that case. People may not come back and see it the same way. So we wanted something we could walk in, enhance what was there, not dramatically change it. And I feel like it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's neat. There was something else that you touched on too that I want to hit on, just because these are things I've always been wanting our listeners to hear, and you're touching on a lot of them.
Yeah.
Is seller financing.
Yeah, it's huge.
So a lot of people, one of the biggest obstacles is I don't have the money to start.
Yeah.
So seller financing is one of the ways to overcome that. Can you go into a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah, I would say it's really helpful when you have a seller who understands seller financing and the benefits of it.
Mm-hmm. That's true too.
So if I buy a business from you today for $250,000 and just stroke you a check, Uncle Sam's going to be excited this year, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, he's going to be stoked. But if you say, hey, Alan, I'll tell you what, I'll seller finance this thing for you for 10 years, not even charge interest or whatever the IRS minimum is that year, 3%, whatever.
Right.
I don't care to make extra money. I don't want to get taxed on $250 this year. So I'm just going to turn around and pay you around $2,000 a month for 10 years, which is super easy on the cash flow for a business. And, most sellers want some skin in the game, right? So maybe you put down 10%. Guys, if you don't have 10% of $250 or whatever the business is, somebody around you does. I think that's just grossly overlooked, because maybe your direct inner circle doesn't, but somebody in your sphere of influence has some money and they want to get involved with it. Mm-hmm. And you just may not know that they've got the money there, or you may not know that they've got the appetite to put it somewhere. But people with cash generally need to find a place to put it. They have cash because they're smart enough to do something to get the cash. Right. Mm-hmm. And typically it was they sent those little dollars out to go make friends, and they came back with more of them. Mm-hmm. And then they got to turn around and do it again. Right. So it sounds monumental, and I feel like it can be for your first time around until you get comfortable with having those conversations. Right. But it's not that difficult. Now, you got to do homework, right? Like you got to come in, here's why this makes sense. Here's what I think your expected return on your capital can be. But, we've got this seller here. He just wants $25,000 down. I've got $5,000, $10,000 extra I can put into the checking account, but I need you to help me get this thing closed up. Yeah. And maybe have them put in a little bit extra too, just so that you do have, some dry powder. But if you can get that done, get a good seller finance deal done, and you can make good on that, then now you've got another financing relationship going forward. You make good on it. You always make sure you get them taken care of, and things just work from there. You get the first one done, the next ones are way easier. Oh yeah. Bigger and bigger projects. Because people also talk to. I think if you could borrow money from a private individual, and it's known at some point, whether it's from them or from you or whatever the reason, that they're involved with it, they're going to ask that person, what made you decide to do it? Because maybe you've got cash sitting around, Tyler, and you're like, hey, well, I've never actually gotten into any private financing or putting private money into a business or something like that. And you go and you ask Chris why you got involved with me. As well, I don't know. I just wanted to see what happened with it, but it's worked out great. Alan's doing this, he's doing that, blah, 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 and I would do it again. Well, then now he's interested in doing something like that. And so you just end up kind of building this network around you after you get something like that done. But seller finance is huge for the seller just as it is the buyer. The tax benefits of it, you're creating a stream of income as a seller. You're going to get that check every month for how many ever years, whatever the deal was. And you're not getting taxed on all that money in the very first year. And I don't know, there's a ton of benefits, but you need a good attorney, you need a good CPA. So I am neither, just so we're clear. Right. But I know enough to be dangerous and put some structure together and send it to those guys and be like, all right, well, here's how we need to make it work. Yeah. Based on these ideas.
The other thing that you touched on too is finding that private money that's out there right now. Something we talked about before getting onto the podcast, not getting too far involved in finance, but there's a lot of cash out there right now.
Tons of cash. So much cash on the sidelines. People don't know what to do with it. And even just discussing outside of what we do on a professional basis, the world of real estate right now is insane when it comes to private money. There's so much money to be made as a private lender. You've got everything from sub-2 financing right now, because you've got all these mortgage rates out there for 2 or 3%. And people, frankly, they just get kind of stuck in them. Like if you got a home, at 3%, right, and you bought it at the height of the market, and you try to sell that house now, maybe you can get even, but the issue is that buyer for that price point may not exist anymore, right? So that I don't know, that $300,000 to say $700,000 price point right now is fairly difficult, because if you were buying a $400,000 house, maybe 2-3 years ago, you're buying a $200,000 house now, somewhere in that area. It's just a lot more challenging. So this whole sub-2 thing is where you've already got a mortgage, and you're going to let somebody you're going to essentially assign that mortgage and go outside of the bank and use a mortgage servicing company. a lot of those mortgages have due on sale clauses. You do that, you got to be tight in your documentation. But that's the only way that you can get rid of a house in some cases without being underwater on it. And so you basically, the selling point is, hey, look, you can take over my 2.75% mortgage instead of you going out right now and getting one in the mid sixes.
Yeah.
It can be challenging.
Yeah. It's crazy to think that, to me, when you go from a 3 to a 4%, like in the grand scheme of things, it looks really small.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at like a mortgage rate, it's drastic.
Yeah.
That's tens of thousands of extra dollars at the end of that term, let alone when it went from 3 to 7.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's painful.
I mean, if you're buying houses and you're keeping them, let's probably better to say primary houses. Like you're completely betting on appreciation if you're not planning on living there for a long time. You're not paying anything down on your mortgage.
Right.
They're completely front loaded, by design of the amortization, because they know that the average. I'm not a mortgage guy. Like I forget what the number is, but average person moves or refinances like every 4 or 6, 7 years, something like that.
7,
Yeah. So it's okay. Well, then we know that mortgage debt is never going to go away. We're just refinancing it from bank to bank to bank to bank. And so unless your home is appreciating, there's no benefit there. Maybe unless you bought pre 2020 or something, there's a ton of appreciation, but it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, that whole space, I mean, you can find private capital for anything. There's always somebody that wants to put some money somewhere. And I think once you develop a good reputation and getting some things done, it's a lot easier. When we first started getting into flipping houses, like we did not have the capital that we needed to do that kind of thing on our own. So, I mean, we were going out and getting a primary construction loan, and, typically, maybe they do 75%, maybe 80% loan to cost.
Right.
So, if you bought a house, like the first flip that we did was, we bought it for $56,000. Doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, granted, like this thing had a hole in the roof. Like you could see the sunlight when you walk in. Everything had to be totally redone. But, a good example was, so we go in, we get a construction loan. We say, all right, well, the purchase on this is, $55,000. We think the rehab's going to be 70, right? Like the bank's not going to stroke you a check for 120 grand. Yeah. They're going to give you maybe 100. And so you got to figure out the other 20. So all we did is we just turned around and we said, all right, well, we need to go find someone else with the other 20. And so these are, smaller numbers compared to some of the ones that we're doing now. But like we just went out and we said, all right, we'll let somebody take a second position on this house, on the deed of trust, on title.
Right.
So that if something goes wrong, they would have the right that they could come in and finish the property, sell it, whatever. So, so we ultimately did the first few houses with 100% of everyone else's money. Yeah. And so I think it's just something that people need to keep in mind. Like it is not impossible to get into this kind of stuff at all. So now, granted, we paid that person for that 20 grand, probably like 3% a month. Right. Yeah. But on 20 grand, you shouldn't focus, in my opinion, this is completely anti-Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
You should not focus on the interest rate when you're doing something that's going to generate more money for yourself. If you're going out and you've got consumer debt, different ballgame, right? You want to be either none of that or super low interest rate. But for something like this, I mean, 20 grand, so 3% a month on, what is that, like $600 a month?
Bucks, yeah.
So if you had that for 6 months, great. You spent $3,600, right? So if we're in this house for 120 and that one sold for 180, like who cares?
Who cares about it? Yeah. You can have that 3,600.
Yeah. So people get all bent out of shape, I think, on interest rates sometimes. But, you want the flow of money to be quick to make money for doing these types of projects. I mean, the project is only going to be as profitable as you can get the money, right? Or at the speed at which you can get the money. Yeah. Projects that are just out here lingering, they're liabilities, and they sit around forever.
Yeah.
But you can do this on bigger scales. I mean, you go and you go get $1 million house that you're going to buy a lot. You're going to build $1 million house. It's the same thing. Maybe you got to find 300 grand this time. Right. But you might can sell that thing for 1.5 or 1.6 by the time it's done. So who cares if you spend $150,000 in capital cost and you make 350? Who cares?
Right.
You might get to a point when you can just put all your own money in it. You don't need that. Congratulations. But until you get to that point, if you build the reputation, you follow through, you pay everyone back. People see that. I mean, we've had people in the last few years that contact us and say, "Hey, what projects have you got going on? If you have anything pop up, we sold a couple things here and there. We've got some cash we need to do something with in the short term." And maybe there's a case where it's, I'm actually shopping around right now. I'm trying to find 100 grand to get this thing refinanced or to close this deal or whatever. You show them what it looks like and you show the other jobs you've done over the last couple of years, and they're like, "Hey, no problem. Let's jump in on it." So that's our dynamic has been, I feel like we've had a lot of really good traction in the real estate stuff because, I've done a good job at putting together the deals money wise. Yeah. And my wife is the most critical person ever of how the house is going to get designed.
Yeah.
She's done all that stuff. And we have really good partners and contractors too. We've been using the guys here locally. Like if you need a house built, legit, go talk to Chris and Kyle over at Source Contracting. No shame in giving a shout out on there. They get it done. And they work faster than we can put stuff together half the time. I mean, it's just good. So, they do a great job. My wife, she puts together all the designs. Looks like it came out of a magazine. She's not only just looking at what looks good for the house, but what's on the market currently in the same price range. And if it looks boring, we need to do it better than that so that we come at the same price point and we're the best option. Right. So that's the entire premise. But the more you can do without your own money, especially as you're getting started, the quicker you can build up wealth. I mean, again, Dave Ramsey, phenomenal guy, right? Get people out of debt that have restricted income, or maybe they don't have flexibility in their income. Phenomenal programs. But once you get to that point when you don't have a bunch of consumer debt and things like that, you're going to get handicapped, in my opinion, if you follow those. Because every person that you meet probably at some point in time who's wealthy or has done this and that, they did it from using other people's money, right? At some point in time, they've had debt. You get to that point, you don't need to have car loans perhaps or consumer loans to go buy this and that, but they got there by using other people's money because they didn't have it. Yeah. More often than not, they didn't have it in the beginning either.
Exactly. No, I like everything that you just said there. I always have the Dave Ramsey conversation. I'm like, if you're trying to get yourself out of debt, he has some of the best programs in the world to get yourself out of debt and some of the rules to make sure you don't get back into it again. Yep. But if you're looking to actually generate and create wealth for yourself and legacy for your family, you should probably look elsewhere for that information.
Yeah, you've got to. Yeah. I mean, so that kind of led in, doing all the real estate stuff led into, I mean, when you're doing a bunch of different projects, it can get a little bit convoluted and difficult to keep up with.
Yeah, for sure.
What partners are in on what. It just gets just a lot. So we talked about it over the summer when I switched firms for the final time. I'm never moving again. It's such a pain. I hate it for the clients. I hate it for me and everyone around me because I get ornery. But we said, maybe we should just control how we get our capital. And, we're using all these people who have partnered with us. They trust us. I can call them up on a whim. And, as long as everything makes sense and it's a legitimate reason, cool. Like they'll send money over. But so let's formalize this and create a fund, right? So we created a fund. And through that, we can help work on our own properties. We can joint venture with other builders who need capital in the same scenarios like I just described. We'll lend out. It's all more expensive money. Like the fund was developed to be a high yield fund. So I mean, if you're grade A credit, you're going to be at 24% annual interest. But again, who cares what the interest rate is if your spreads are good enough? And I'm looking at the spreads too when we're underwriting a deal at the fund.
Sure, yeah.
I need to know that you can, one, pay the interest, but two, you're not putting yourself in a poor position to get upside down on a project because that's not good. I don't want to have to go finish someone else's project.
Exactly. And you want them coming back too. So if they have profit, they're going to do it again.
Absolutely. So, that's been super fun. And, the more traction we've got with that is kind of snowballed with people wanting to get on board. It's mostly for people that can put some cash up and they don't need the liquidity. They can at least forget about it for a a year. Or if they've got an IRA that they could do like self-directed aspect, put some, because that's even better, especially if you have a Roth. It's,
lock it away. Yeah. Who cares?
So it's, it's pretty neat. So we've grown that quite a bit and we'll continue to grow that. But it made it a lot easier because now we can partner with our fund to get projects done. It takes the stress away of, is our partner going to actually be able to follow through on what they committed, to funding while we get midway, because we've had that happen. We're halfway through a project and I say, hey, we need this other tranche now. And they're like, oh, well, I can't do it right now. I'm like, cool. It just puts you in a bad spot because then you got to go find out. The more emergency the money is, the more expensive it is.
Yeah, of course.
So it's ideal to have all that stuff lined up ahead of time.
Yeah.
So, we've been pinched in some spots like that. So we said, let's just control this going forward. So that was a whole nother world that we jumped into. But yeah, I think it's just huge. You just got to find good partners who you can align with and you guys are on the same page. And whether you're buying a business or whatever it is, if it's an asset, it's just not that hard to get people to come in with you as long as you've got a good story to go along with it and it all checks out.
For the people that are listening that are interested in a real estate fund like that, what's the ideal client for that, or the ideal prospect or minimums or whatever you use as your criteria?
Yeah. So there's, I'll explain it by explaining the structure.
Yeah. That's probably the best way. Yeah.
So there's the two structures that you oftentimes find out there, whether it's like a Grant Cardone type of fund, those are all 506C. Yep. The C is the important part there. They can advertise, right? So they can go out and get any, Tom, Dick, or Harry out there to put money into the fund. But in those funds, you have to show certification that you're an accredited investor.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, was that $200,000 average income, or reason to believe it's going to be at least 200,000 or $1 million net worth, other than your primary property or something. So you got to be able to show on paper from a CPA or tax return or an asset statement that you fit that criteria. I also don't have to know you. 506B, which is the route we went, is kind of the opposite of that. For one, it's self-certification. So there's a box you check that you're an accredited investor. And I kind of like that. And you're also supposed to have a relationship with that person to a reasonable degree. Yeah. Like talking to you guys today, you guys understand this stuff. A month or two from now, if y'all call me up, never met you before, Chris, right? So a month or two, you call me and we have a couple more conversations and you're like, hey, I'm interested in learning more about that thing. Like we've developed some rapport and a relationship at that point, but I can't just walk around the street handing out flyers, right? So that's a big difference. But the self-certification of the accredited investor, I think, is really important in some aspect because, for one, it's always going to be my job to make sure that somebody is suited to go in it. It's a suitable investment for them to make, right? They're going to park some cash up. They don't have control of it. There's no liquidity. Like when a dollar comes in this thing, it's literally going out to someone else. This isn't like an ETF or a stock that you can trade with instant liquidity. Yeah, there isn't. So that's why we do it. We do a 12-month lockup period. If you can't just forget about it for 12 to 18 months, it's not the right deal, right? We've also got minimums because that also shows some degree of wherewithal at, what kind of capital you can put out. So we have a $50,000 minimum. But what was the other piece I was going to mention? So yeah, but we've got to know somebody. But I remember. So I think there's a lot of people, I'm sure you've run across them, where they're maybe on the younger side, they're extremely financially responsible. They have the understanding in of how that world works. They've got a bunch of cash they've saved up, but maybe they don't quite meet that accredited investor aspect. Right. It is self-certification. They're the ones that are checking the box. Yes or no. I don't have to collect asset statements, things like that. It's just not my fund. It's every fund. And these are the rules that are set forth, right? So I'm just going by the rules. Yeah. And I typically try to ask people, I'm like, look, don't put your last dollar in this.
Don't do that.
It's just not a good idea. Because I just don't want calls in 3 months from now. Okay, I can't pay my mortgage this month. I'm like, dude, this is not good.
Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, so we've avoided all that stuff. But anyway, there's a lot of really responsible people out there that maybe don't have $1 million of liquidity to meet that other aspect there. But they'd have no problem parking $50,000 for 5 years and forget about it. Yeah. I think the 506B gives that opportunity. And I think that's why, I don't know this for a fact, but I think that's why those regulations are made around the 506B where you have to have a relationship with them. Right. Is because I think that onus falls on me. Well, I know it does. Right. Yeah. To make sure that they're not making an irresponsible decision for themselves. Yeah. So that's kind of how I always try to answer it. There's the two different ways. We don't advertise, directly. We just create relationships. There is that degree of somebody knows you, you know me, there's a reasonable belief there that there's some, a connection between me and the second degree. Yeah. And then you just kind of work it from there. But yeah, so the ideal person, to summarize, is somebody they've got some cash they can forget about it for at least 12 to 18 months. Yeah. Or they've got an IRA, which you already know you have to forget about for, until you're 60. Right. But those are really ideal people. And they understand that there's just not a lot of liquidity. There's a lot of upside return in the private capital world, and you don't have market exposure, which can be a good thing at times when things are a little bit tumultuous. But so yeah, I think people want to find creative ways to make money because I think that a lot of people are uncertain about the stock market. That means you shouldn't be in it. By the way, it is a time in the market. It's not timing the market. But I don't think it hurts for diversification either. So it's my long-winded answer for you.
Yeah, I love it. Great.
Yeah, I feel like I've met enough people. And they all say the same thing. It's like you said earlier, like you just need to diversify because you can't focus on one thing forever and then find out like 5-10 years down the road, oh, that wasn't for me.
Sure. Yeah.
And this is a great way. If you've been investing and you've been diversifying, you know what works. And this is another way to help just kind of add to that diversification.
Yeah. I don't believe in an all or none in any capacity. Doesn't matter what your wealth level is. I think it's phenomenal for people to just go all in on their business, but I feel like at some point you do have to take some chips off the table and put that control in some regard to someone else, whether it's that whether you don't even have an advisor, like I'm not even saying that, go put it somewhere else. Maybe this has some exposure to the stock market, right? So you're getting some broader impact of the economy aside from what you're doing inside of your own business, right? Or maybe you go into a private fund, or maybe you start buying a couple of rental houses, or maybe you invest with a buddy so they can do a business. Whatever it is, I think it makes sense to pull some chips off the table and start everything with the ending in mind. Like a lot of small business owners now that are in their late 50s and 60s. I forget that it's I think been pretty prevalent over the last year. There's the next 5 or 10 years. There's going to be the biggest wealth transfer ever, especially in the small business world. You have all these like unassuming businesses everywhere that these guys have owned for 50 years, and they're just printing money. But they have no idea how to exit. Because it's been a job to them just as much as a business. And
shout out to Cody Sanchez, who's really pushing that online too. So she's one of the people that are really harping on that right now. She's going out and saying, hey, you know what? There's people out there who they're ready to retire. Their businesses are cash flowing like no one's business. Take it over. Look for those type of things and take the transfer for yourself and don't just 100%. Watch it.
Yeah. And going back to buying and selling businesses and stuff like that, that's a perfect scenario where if you don't have the means to buy it, either go and approach that person about seller financing, or go work out an apprenticeship, right? Go join the business and do it selflessly, right? So many people just, we're in an entitlement age right now, and everybody feels like they are owed something. They should start at a certain level, whether they bring anything to the table or not. You've got to be more humble than that. Right? Like you have to go in. If you want to get to a certain point, nobody cares about you if you are not bringing something to the table out of the goodness of your heart, for genuine reasons. It's probably the best way to say it.
Yeah.
So go find that business that you really want to be a part of, or that you can see yourself owning, and just be present there, I think, and just put forth the effort. I'm sure you've probably heard the saying, it's you should be willing to do the work before you get the raise, right? So it's, don't walk in there just saying, hey, here's my price. This is what I need. I'm going to come in and do you favors, because that's just not how it works. But because of that transfer, I think that it's going to be difficult in a lot of cases for all those to transfer by sale. And there's going to have to be some pretty creative, financing, or some pretty creative deals to get worked out there. Those guys, when they retire, they're still going to want a stream of income.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah. How many of them have you ever met, Tyler, that just, they've been maybe they've got an automotive shop, right? And they've got a ton of cash, but they've never just been handed a check for $2-3 million, right? Like, here, you're done now. Right. Go do something different. That is such an abrupt change to somebody's reality. And I think that people want to avoid that, because they're gonna get very bored very quick. But
so I like what you said there too, because that's actually something that's a lot more deals that I'm seeing happening right now. Is they've been doing this job for 40, 50 years. They don't want to completely leave. And quite honest, you probably don't want them to. One, you have all of that information that they have. And two, like what you said before, you're buying the person and not the business as much. So if you have that overlap of time where you're working with this individual who's ran that business for so long, now you're standing there side by side with this guy, even if he's only working 2 or 3 days a week, going, oh, hey, this is Chris. He's taking this over from me. He's a great guy. Let me introduce you to him. But hey, don't worry. I'm still going to work in your car today.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, I know we see it a lot in the finance world, or any service-based thing. It's difficult when you have a recurring fee, or you've had a long-term relationship with someone and it just up and stops one day. It's not great. No, so if you can have someone with 50 years worth of knowledge and you come on board with them and do like a more of an earn-out type deal, where both of you have some active ownership, both of you have some skin in the game. The owner gets to relax a little bit more and not carry the stress, because maybe you're head in the whole deal, but they're still there. They come on as an employer, consultant. They're still getting paid. Then they're also getting paid some money as the business performs. You can base those things off, profit share or whatever. They get a much higher stake of the profit, until they're completely paid out for what the purchase price is. There are so friggin' many ways. My attorney for this kind of stuff always says it's just contract law. Like whatever you can think of that you can agree with somebody, you can put into a contract. And is what it is. Like anything, doesn't matter. I mean, like there's some standards, for different ideas to do it, but I think that's huge. If you can keep somebody on board, I mean, for a longer period of time, like you said, they don't want to just up and quit. They have no idea what to do with themselves. They've been working 12 hours a day for 50 years and they love what they do. More often than not, they can't get rid of it fully. So that's a really good point.
That's also another way too. There's a lot of people out there that they probably should retire or they should start calming down because they'll eventually have a heart attack one day from just working so hard so long. But that's one way to get into it. If you see something, there's an opportunity out there. Everyone has a dollar and everyone has a negotiation in them for something. If you're like, hey, you know what, that business is doing extremely well, I like part of it, and you work out that deal, there's always something available.
And if they're not willing to do that or they're not open to it, it very well could just take some time. And I think that's where you got to go in. You got to spend some time there. You got to just go understand the person that's running that business and figure out what their plan is. But don't do it with this intention of, hey, I want to buy this thing right now. Like it just doesn't work that way, especially with the old mom and pop type deal, right? Yep. Like you've got to get in there. They got to like you a lot. So, it's a super exciting time to be thinking about that. I think if you are considering buying a business, now's the time to start getting your ducks in a row. Yeah. Start doing research on what types of deals you think you could get done, identify the types of businesses it is. If it's your first time doing it, you just don't have any experience, then partner up with somebody. There's no shame in it. Partner up. Spread it around. You're doubling your time capacity. You're doubling your output ability when you have somebody else there with you too. There's no shame in it. You don't have to do it by yourself. And then just get good representation to make sure everything's buttoned up. But if you can't figure any of that out on your own, then just go talk to somebody. Go sit down and pay $500 for a 2-hour consulting appointment with an attorney, like a good business attorney. It's worth it. Very worth it.
Absolutely. One of my performance coach says something really good, talking about like it takes time and you have to go through the process to make it work. It's called aggressive patience. That's what he always says. Like you need to go into it knowing that you're going to aggressively be patient. Yeah. So this is going to be the long game. You have to do what's right.
100%.
Like, in this world of instant gratification, that's not where the money's made.
Yeah. The funny thing too that I noticed even coming up through the finance thing, and it's relative to any business, not even just finance, but you make a certain number of phone calls to set a certain number of appointments, or you change this tactic around and it works really quickly for you. So what's the first thing? The human brain is so weird. It's like what works extremely quick, you're like, oh, that was so comfortable, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's like you almost stop doing it. Then you just go back to the grindstone and just do it the hard way. I've never understood. I would even find myself doing that. I would change up some language in phone calls I was making, and it would just like work like crazy. And then you'd almost get scared to do it again because it'll break your track record. I don't know. Then you just go back to Old Faithful, and it's just the number of I don't know. You just gotta have some set goals and have a little bit of vision and hold yourself accountable. I feel like in any of these pieces, whether it's going out and finding money, figuring out where you want to get to, I don't know. You gotta just drive. Like nothing is handed to you. There's more competition out there now than there ever has been for people who want to do the same thing as you. Yeah. You can find that evident by finding videos floating around on Instagram where everyone is trying to do the same thing and sell you a course because they figured out how to do it, but they don't actually know how. They're not doing it themselves. I don't know. It's frustrating to see some of that because I know how difficult a lot of this stuff is that these guys are out here pushing, trying to sell courses and all that. And if they're not doing it themselves, there's no real proof. They just got pictures in front of Lamborghinis and all that. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my life.
It's crazy too. There's businesses now where they rent out the Lamborghinis for people taking in front of that, or a private jet to walk up the stairwell to the private jet to get your picture taken so you can put it on that course. It's crazy that there's so many people doing it that there was someone who was able to monetize off of it. It's mind-blowing.
What's more mind-blowing to me is how many people are so naive. Like, I've seen the best example of that is the day trader who looks like he's just 22 years old, and he's completely decked out in all this designer clothes, and he's walking up this, the stairs of to get on their jet, and they're going to go fly to their office to go do some day trading in a suit. I'm like, that is the most backward thing for what actually happens. Is you're rolling up with, some slides on, you got sweatpants on, your hair's a mess, and you throw your blue screen glasses on. Like, that's what it is. Those are the people that are making money, not this clown. It drives me nuts. I don't know. It shouldn't drive me nuts, but I think what drives me nuts is that there's so many people that are buying into that, and they're like, wow, here, take my money. Now I'm subscribed to you. I'm going to get rich just like you. And then they never do. Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's insane. Like, just go out and do some old fashioned work. Yeah.
No, but an MLM is so much easier.
Yeah. That's such an interesting business model though, too. Right. Because it's like, is it, yes, MLM as a title, but is it a distribution model, or is it, because what's the difference between that and then throwing something in retail? Yeah. Right. I do try to look more at like what the actual product is a lot of times. There's a lot obviously like shady ones out there that are here today and they're gone tomorrow and they're just trash products. But there's definitely some out there. I still think it's an interesting distribution model, and the guy at the top always wins the most. There's still always that design.
Right, yeah.
But, who knows? Maybe we see these pop up on the shelves one day, and at least for 6 months or a year, somebody created that small business. I know the attrition rate is pretty high in that world, as it is a lot of things. Finance is no different.
Right. And still the MLM thing too, the only ones that are successful at are the hustlers.
That's right.
So you could go into an MLM, you could go into a sales shop, you could be an entrepreneur. That hustle mentality is going to get you to the top no matter which one of those you choose.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. A really good example obviously is Herbalife. Right?
Yeah.
They're publicly traded. You see the stock going up and down. No one has been able to take them down, right? Mm-hmm. You got Bill Ackman trying.
I know, going hard.
Yeah, goes way hard. But he's never been able to take them down.
Yeah.
And so I think that for that company in particular, I have no affiliation at all, but it does speak some volume as to they are, I feel like, changing people's lives in a degree. If somebody is ultra unhealthy, even if their product maybe isn't the most desirable thing, if it's giving you enough sustenance and nutrition to where it's going to help you lose weight and get back on a good track where you can maybe maintain it, I'm all for it. But then some of the other just ridiculous fads that come along on the health side, they're all gone. So I think there's definitely some good ones, and then there's some that are a little bit sketchy. Now weighing through those and sifting and the ones that make it seem the easiest are probably the ones I'd avoid.
Yeah.
It's none of it's easy. That is a sell to sell type business. You got to just grind it out, like you were saying. But,
I know you do have a trip up to Durham here shortly too, so I'll have Chris ask his last question, and then I'll have one after that.
Perfect.
So mine for you is, with all the businesses and all the things you've done, what would success look like for you, currently and future?
That's something I've been trying to reframe for myself, and not just for myself. Literally last night, my wife and I were having this conversation. We're we just need to make sure that we're on the same page. Because there have just been so many different things. We're running a million different directions sometimes. So when I think about the why or what success looks like, to me, it's just freedom, I think, you're not relying on other people. Maybe there's a fewer number of people that are relying on you, and you just have complete control over your day in and day out. And that, by the way, is not necessarily defined by money. Right. You could have that without having a ton of money. But I think that success is where you build a foundation, you build a platform in your life that will provide just peace. It provides stability. It provides a degree of, I don't have to be concerned about certain things. Right. And that's different for everybody. So I don't really know what that level looks like for me. And that's one of the things I am challenged with. That I have a very difficult time doing, because I also really, really like the feeling of getting a deal put together, having some. It's not even like a dollar sign anymore. It's it's maybe like a scoreboard, or just a feeling of, man, got through this, that worked out great, and I get excited that we identified this, we figured it out, we got it done, and we won. Even small wins that don't even have to do with money. I think getting wins and getting that endorphin pump, even for that short period of time, I don't know. I keep getting drugged back in time after time again. So even if I got to that point where I feel like, I can just kick my feet up a little bit, I still think I need something else to drive for and to chase. Chase isn't necessarily the right word, but you get the idea.
Right, yeah.
So I'd say largely I don't know, other than just having full control of my life day in and day out, where there's very little that's going to disrupt my thought patterns for the day or the way that I'm feeling for the day. No one's going to come in and have control over, overtaking what is going on in my brain, because it's something intrusive is happening. To me, that's success, when you have full control.
Nice.
And I think that could be like getting a super cushy, W-2 role too, where it's just a low stress, you do your thing and you go on about your day. There's so many ways to define it, but that's what it looks like for me, for sure.
I like that.
Yeah, love it. So with that being said, if you were to tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Oh, man. I'd be dangerous if I knew what I knew now when I was 18. Yeah, I think I would still go with the mantra of just, when you're young and you can afford the time and you don't have the responsibility, just to outwork everyone else. And and just constantly learn. You know, I feel like I did a lot of learning early on, but I don't know that I was learning all the right things.
Right.
You know, I think you dial in your degree of learning. I'd say just learn and outwork everybody and just try to build really good foundational relationships instead of just run around gallivanting and partying on the weekends. Like that does not pay off when you're 30 in any fashion. If you waste 4 or 5 years of your life doing nothing, you're that much further behind.
Yeah. The one thing that I've learned probably the most over the past maybe 5-6 years is it's not the partying, right? And meeting the people out at the bars. It's those extra dinners and those extra like nights out with the people that matter.
Yeah.
And making those connections that way.
Yeah.
So you never know when you're going to have a random lunch with someone or a random coffee with someone and what that may lead to.
You're 100% right. I will say, I will preface what I'm going to say with this is do all of these things genuinely.
Right.
But I think there's a lot of truth to, you know, your income is going to average, you know, the best 10 people around you that you spend your time with, right? You're going to, you know, it's an old saying of, you know, you're going to be the books that you read in 5 or 10 years, that kind of thing. You know, what you consume, I feel like you put yourself in positions, even if you're not there, you know, put yourself around the people and consume the things that you want to become. And ultimately, I truly believe that it will happen. I mean, just look at the crowd that you're around right now. What are they doing on the weekends, right? What are you doing on the weekends? It's probably the same freaking thing, right? If you don't want to do that forever, then I think that you need to change who you're around. And you need to make those sacrifices. You might think that this is fun or that's fun. What's fun is like getting some traction in life.
Yeah.
Like real traction to where you can move toward whatever your definition of success is.
Yeah.
So those are my 2 cents. And that to me is a lot more fun than going out to the bars every night in college. I did a lot. Like I'm not gonna lie. I did a lot. Of that.
We all did.
But telling myself, it's like, maybe don't do that. You know, maybe start going to different community events and things and get involved with the people who are actually important in town.
Yeah.
And develop those genuine relationships that can last you your entire career. It's huge.
Yeah. That's great.
Interesting. So, where can people reach out if you want them to, or you got anything you want to shout out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an open book. Like I spend a lot of time I like talking to people. Like I like helping people and trying to help people get on some good footing and learn something they didn't know. I mean, I can always be reached. You can shoot me a message on Instagram. It's pretty easy. It's Allen.Tyndall, you know, ALLEN .Tyndall, TYNDALL. Yeah, just shoot me a message. Like I really am an open book. I like to see people come up. I like to, you know, no one has a patent on all good ideas. You know, that's so. Bring them to me. Like, let's just talk about things. If you have questions, you're trying to get somewhere, and maybe you think I can help, I'm happy to do it. So I had a lot of people that did that for me. So I'm all about it.
Like to hear it.
That's great. Appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for your time today. I know you got a trip coming up, so we'll let you head on out that way. But yeah, thank you so much. A lot of good information today, and we appreciate it.
Awesome. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.